Alright, fine. Let's talk about Just Stop Oil, the saviors of soup, the mashed potato paladins. I'm sure you're familiar with them by now. Their big claim to fame is the time they threw tomato soup on that Van Gogh painting about a week ago. I'll go ahead and play the clip in case you don't know what I'm talking about.
Security?
This was their big protest here that lit the fire under everyone's ass and immediately made us stop using oil and saved the planet. Now, the painting wasn't injured in this stunt. There was no damage done to the painting or anything like that. And they said they wouldn't have done it if they thought there would be the chance of, ruining the piece. It was behind glass. Their intention with this wasn't to try and get people rallying behind them to start a movement of, throwing food at paintings. Like, gather your kids together and get their Lunchables and go to your nearby museum to throw them at the paintings. God forbid French onion soup into the fray. Lord help us all if that was the case. The main purpose behind this demonstration and all of the other demonstrations is to try and get a conversation started on the deeper meaning behind their protests. But because it's all been so silly and stupid, the only conversation that's been had is roast sessions on them, calling them clowns and just focusing on how outrageous this whole thing they've done is. This was a huge deal that I didn't really bother talking about because I thought it'd be a one and done kind of thing. But since this, they've become very brave and bold and really fighting the good fight out there by throwing mashed potatoes on another famous painting, as well as employing the oldest trick in the book, a timeless classic everyone loves, blocking traffic and crossings. But anyway, Just Stop Oil is an activist group that is doing everything they can to keep their names in the headlines, hoping that through these controversial demonstrations, people will dig a bit deeper into the organization and support them. They're trying to convey a positive message through terrible means. The message is climate change is a serious problem that needs to be taken seriously, and we need to start acting on it. And the first thing that must be done is cutting our reliance on fossil fuels, ending certain licenses regarding oils, and look for more alternatives like renewable energy sources and stuff like that. But their demonstrations obviously aren't directly combating climate change or doing anything to help. Mother Nature isn't healing because some tomato soup got thrown on a painting. At this point, they're not even really seen as climate change activists, they're just seen as cereal soupers. But I guarantee local grocery stores are seeing a massive boom in soup sales, so that's great that they're helping local businesses, I suppose. But I also think it is a bit silly because they've taken a real message, and a message that I, as well as many people, do agree with when it comes to climate change and the importance of it. And they've turned it into a joke, a laughingstock, and turned people against it. It's made even more pathetic by the fact that they come across as massive hypocrites during their own demonstrations because they're wasting food and using cell phones. Those cell phones alone have contributed far more harm to the earth than the paintings that they're vandalizing. So it just doesn't even really seem like they believe their own messages. I feel like they're just doing it for their own personal attention or their own personal feeling of moral superiority. I don't really know. But there was a clip I saw just the other day where during one of their blocking moments, where they're blocking traffic, one of them superglues their hand to the road and throws the superglue in the drain right next to them. Fighting the good fight! I'm not 100% certain that this was from a Just Stop Oil protest. This could have been Extinction Rebellion or something else, but even still, all of these similar organizations are now using similar tactics, and I feel like it's all started because of Just Stop Oil. But Just Stop Oil is by far the biggest here at the moment, and it's also the one that has some very weird shit going on with it. For instance, it's backed by an oil heiress. An oil heiress named Eileen Getty has donated a lot of money to this group, and that immediately throws into question the legitimacy behind the organization because it's an oil heiress. Right? That immediately raises some red flags. Now, I've done a little bit of research on her. Of course, I'm no expert. I don't know her life or anything like that. But from everything I've read, it seems like she's never directly been in the oil business herself. She's been more focused on philanthropy. But again, I'm not 100% sure. So take all of this with a grain of salt, but she does back Just Stop Oil, and I do think it is a really weird look that an oil heiress is someone that's kind of behind this. I don't know if this is conspiratorial, but I do think there is merit behind the belief that Just Stop Oil is purposely silly and useless with their protests in order to belittle the message behind Just Stop Oil, to try and make people turn against it and only look at climate change as like a joke and equate climate change with soup throwing public protests where they're immediately just going to be like laughing about it and just not take it seriously and weaken the message, because all of these protests are dumb. They may be throwing tomato soup on paintings, but the entire public is throwing tomatoes at them. And it just completely takes all of the real messaging down. It's been doing more harm than good to the cause that they're supposed to be rallying for. And it's also weird that they're not actually targeting anything directly related to what they're protesting against. They're not targeting like oil locations or, higher ups in the oil field or anything like that. They're just sticking with very public things that only affect normal people as opposed to the people in power. The whole thing does feel very fishy. And I've seen a couple of takes from people that support Just Stop Oil about how, it's ridiculous that we care more about art, this old painting, than we do life on Earth and the environment. And I think that's an argument in bad faith, because no one's comparing this art to life. Nobody's doing that. No one is saying we care more about this art than the planet. That's just not a conversation that's been being had. The people that are talking about the art more than your message is because they're talking about you throwing fucking soup on it and how silly it is. They're not saying that that art is more important to protect than the planet. You've just done something so outrageous that everyone is now focused on the actual outrageous thing you've done, which happens to involve that art. So I feel like a lot of wires are getting crossed here. And I also see a lot of people saying, well, what else are we supposed to do? How do we get, the higher ups' attention? We've tried everything and nothing's changing. So why don't we do these big public displays? And in this perspective, I can kind of understand feeling powerless and just trying to do anything to put the message out there. But why does it have to be something overwhelmingly negative and negatively affecting the people around you? You can absolutely get this message across in a positive way. Let's take, for example, Mr. Beast. I know this isn't exactly the best example, but Mr. Beast built his entire career around doing extremely positive things, and now he's the biggest YouTuber on the planet. And he is an extremely successful person. I believe the Mr. Beast brand is valued at over $1 billion now. And that's through only positive messaging and positive things. You can absolutely get messages across in a positive way. It doesn't always have to be like some kind of, vandalism or spray painting cars and shit like that, blocking people's route to work. Why not try a more positive thing and get people talking about you in a good light? Like, hey, did you see what Just Stop Oil did the other day? They saved 15 kids from a burning orphanage. Man, those are some heroes out there. I wonder what else they're up to. As opposed to, man, I'm 50 fucking minutes late to work because 8 people linked their arms and sat down on the interstate and there was nothing we could do about it. When your entire organization relies on people joining in order for it to be strong, there is a such thing as bad publicity. You don't want people to view you in a shitty way, because then you're going to have less people join and support you. So, anyway, that's just me ranting about all of this. I also ranted a bit more about it on stream in relation to the mashed potato incident, so I'll show you some clips of that now real quick. It's really popping off. It's getting the message across really well. I'm sure any day now we'll stop using oil. What is that going to do for them? We've gone over this before when they threw tomato soup on that other painting. We'll go over it again. The idea behind it is get their name in the headlines. Hopefully people will look at the message and be like, all right, I'll support that. That doesn't happen, obviously. All people do is they see the headlines like, wow, bunch of fucking lunatics. I'm going to ignore the message. Terrorist organization. All right, let's not get carried away. Right now, their terror attacks consist of throwing tomato soup and mashed potatoes on paintings, both of which were behind glass, so they didn't actually damage them. They just made themselves look super stupid. I wouldn't necessarily call them terrorists. If they really wanted to do something to, directly try and impact it, I don't know why they wouldn't target the actual oil companies or something. Instead of just blocking the interstate for normal working people, why not block the driveway to one of their houses or some shit? Or block the exit to one of their factories or some shit. Play the video. It's not a very interesting video, but sure, here. It's exactly what you expect. They throw mashed potatoes and then super glue their hands to the wall. Blocking traffic is the worst thing. I don't know if Just Stop Oil blocks traffic. They might. I know it might be Extinction Rebellion that does it, but for some reason, some of these groups block traffic for normal people. So then it's just working people that are significantly late to work because they were blocking traffic to get their message across. Everyone that was late now immediately writes them off and will always go against them 100% of the time. It's just fucking worthless. Oh yeah, they blocked an ambulance once too. I remember that one. That was Extinction Rebellion, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, overall, I just find this whole thing to be a massive miss here, just a fat L for the protests, because the only conversations being had are about how dumb it is, you know, and it's weakening the actual message, which I do think is a good message overall. So it's just doing more harm than good, and it's not doing anything positive or beneficial anywhere. So yeah, just wanted to talk about this a little bit. That's it. See ya.